Hello, this is Rick Wiggins from the University of Utah. Thank you for joining me for the SIIM 2020 virtual meeting. We are now going to begin a non-CME session. This will not be a CME continuing medical education session.
Hi there. Thank you for coming to attend our SIIM presentation. My name is Ben Panter, and I'm the founder and CEO of Microanalysis. We're delighted to have this opportunity to connect with the SIIM membership and also to share this experience with some of our partners who I'll be introducing later on. So we want to talk about the impact that COVID-19 has had on imaging and how radiology facilities can manage the surge that's anticipated afterwards. So let's have a quick look at what we've seen across the entire imaging space through our own servers. So we've seen a dip below the normal imaging volume of about 60%, and that really kicked in when the lockdown occurred in March, April. If you look at external evidence as well, Aunt Minnie has a great article that we've linked down at the bottom of the screen there that's showing that the overall procedure volume was down 50% to 55%. Now we probe imaging centers, we probe radiology groups and hospitals to get this kind of augmented data. But the good news is that that volume is starting to recover. Again, if you look across our deployed base, we're seeing that we're back up to something like 80–90% at the moment. And that's going to continue to grow. If you look again at external studies, the estimate is that radiology is at 82% of the pre-COVID-19 level. But we still need to look at these delayed studies and the potential imaging follow-up due to COVID. I think if you think about the patient perspective though, the need for imaging really hasn't gone away. If you think that you were told you needed a scan 3 months ago, in fact, from your perspective, it's even more urgent that you get that scan and start being able to deal with the treatment that's required for your condition. So you look at those postponed studies and you think, well, what does that mean for the average practice? Well, it means that we're going to have to make up the missing volume, the area that we lost under that curve in March, April, May, and we're going to have to come back up to capacity and go beyond that. And one of the key questions is, how does radiology deal with this, especially with the constraints that are being put in place around personal distancing and cleanliness around the facility? And obviously, what can AI do to help? So if you look at the RSNA in 2019, we saw 130 different vendors with AI products. That's a huge amount of potential there, but really trying to distinguish what is it that's ready to help with your practice, as opposed to what's an interesting idea that may become reality in a few years, is challenging. So when you look at that huge amount of promise, really you need to think, what is it that's in that vast spectrum of companies that can help my practice to deal with that post-COVID imaging surge? So there are 3 areas where we focus in on. The first is reporting efficiency. Fundamentally, this is what can you do to either assist in the general workflow for a radiologist and help all studies be streamlined. And also, second, what can you do for particularly complex exams? What can you do to add value for the referring physician who also faces that backlog? Then we're looking at the modality efficiency. If your facility has 7 CTs, 4 MRs, you can't deploy new modalities at the drop of a hat. We need to try and find ways to get more out of that existing infrastructure to be able to deliver these increased volumes. Bear in mind, we might be looking at 120, 130% of normal volume to be able to catch up. The other thing is that radiology isn't the only area that has the backlog, and it's possible to use AI to help with other backlogs throughout the hospital. That could be in terms of the interventional suite being able to offer an alternative to an interventional procedure, or looking at augmenting surgical procedures with 3D printing or surgical planning tools that allow greater efficiencies to be unlocked throughout the healthcare organization. But there's a real challenge here. I think that anybody that works in healthcare appreciates that the process of deploying a new product is never simple, it's never straightforward, and it can take quite a long time. First of all, you have to work out which products are relevant to the problem you're trying to solve. You've got to try and select those products and really work out, okay, which one of those really matches with our case mix and the outputs that our clinicians need. Then you need to go to IT, and obviously in the past, IT was a radiology function, but now it's part of the wider hospital decision, and there can be a much longer process involved in trying to evaluate new suppliers, trying to evaluate how that integrates with the wider IT. With all that in hand, it's time to build the internal business case to proceed. Obviously, there's legal steps, there's getting in place a business associate agreement, there's the security audits, all sorts of things like that. Finally, you'll get the purchase approval, and then it's down to deploying and getting the hardware and the infrastructure ready. And then there's training, and this is before we've got any value out of any of these products. And the real challenge is that we don't want one application, we probably want 4, 5, 6 to be able to really have an impact on dealing with that post-COVID imaging surge. You can't run these steps in parallel because they're all resource intensive. So you end up having to deliver them in series. And if you think about the implication of that, we've got each application taking maybe 9 months. Doing the first one, then the next one, then the next one, then the next one. And we might be able to accelerate one of these. We might be able to pull in some extra resource to be able to get something done a little bit faster. But I think it's unavoidable that we don't have 3 years to deal with the post-COVID imaging surge. We need to be able to get these solutions in place and operational much quicker than that if they're going to have an impact. So here's where a platform approach comes in. Effectively, a platform approach means finding one supplier that can bring together multiple different solutions onto a single platform. What that does is it helps on the selection process. So selecting relevant applications and understanding what fits with your case mix, that you've been out to the market and you've evaluated all these different suppliers and found the ones that suit you. Being able to procure them straightforwardly with one procurement process rather than multiple ones going in different directions. Having one single legal agreement that once it's agreed, everything else comes under. And a single security assessment, because fundamentally, you really don't want to have to go through 5, 6 different IT approval processes. Then when we get into deployment, if you have one vendor, you only need to do one deployment. And subsequent products are added just by the vendor. It's their problem to sort it out. It also streamlines the deployment of these new products, not just the IT integration, but all the associated stuff that's going on with that. And you want to be making sure that it's coming into the infrastructure that exists already within your facilities. No radiologist wants a new viewer. Nobody wants a new work list. It has to work with what you already have if it's going to be productive. And then you look at the administration and the support aspects. So being able to add and remove applications as your case mix changes, and having a single vendor that handles the maintenance and support side of things. It won't be of any surprise to anybody that Blackford has that platform. We provide a single platform to quickly access a curated marketplace of regulatory cleared medical image analysis applications. So we take all these different products, we deliver them through a single platform, through a single contract, and that goes into hospitals, imaging centers, radiology groups, and resource organizations. So how does this work in practice? Well, first of all, we have to understand you. We have to look at your case mix and really understand, okay, what is there in terms of products that we have that would be applicable today? But then we also go into your referrer base and look at what would be appropriate for them. What are the missed opportunities where potentially whole new service lines could be introduced using both your imaging capability and the AI capabilities that we bring through our partners? Second, we make a suggestion. You know, there's a custom mix of applications that would be relevant for your case mix. And we'll bring those together and build a customized business case for that that reflects both the applications that we have that are applicable for your site and your site's dynamics. We recognize that we're not the absolute experts on all of the applications we hold. We want to make sure that you have access to the vendors who really have the deepest understanding of their problem and the clinical areas that they tackle. And we're very happy to introduce you to these product experts. We don't want to get in the way of that process. Once we've determined what the mixture of applications that you wish to go forward with are, we need to understand your existing infrastructure and workflow. And we need to make sure that whatever the integration paths that we're choosing, that we put those together into something that's optimal for you. We never want to replace huge chunks of your existing IT infrastructure. We just want to augment them to make sure that they deliver what you need them to do. And then when we're talking about the rollout program, this is making sure that we're ensuring success for you, your clinicians, everybody that's involved in the process of using these clinical applications to make sure that the benefit is truly realized. It's worth drilling into a few steps in that process. So first of all, as I said before at RSNA, there's 130 different application vendors out there. And the maturity of those vendors varies between a few folks that have come together to build an algorithm and got a little bit of funding to allow them to have a booth, to fully featured, robust, market-tested applications that have absolute value propositions nailed down, both in terms of the value to the clinician and the business cases they can offer for the customer. Going through those 130 companies is a labor-intensive process, but we do that so you don't have to. So we look at these areas of clinical relevance, clinical value, regulatory approval, hazards analysis, business case, AI performance, clinical users, workflow, IT impact. That all falls into our product evaluation and vetting process to make sure that when we bring you a solution, it's one that really adds value for your practice. The other thing is that there are many places in the imaging journey where an AI platform needs to either interact or be informed. So we have the patient coming in and we'll get the EMR feed, we'll understand that there's something coming in that we need to do something with. So we integrate at the RIS level and the EMR level through HL7 to be able to understand what's arriving and what the best, most applicable clinical application is for that. That also allows us to prefetch the relevant information for that study. When the patient actually arrives in the modality and the scan is acquired, the clock starts to tick. We need to get that data into the hands of the radiologist as quickly as possible. And if there's a pre-processing step that's required before the radiologist gets that, we need to make sure that happens as efficiently as possible. We integrate into the modalities, we integrate into the packs. We have a variety of ways of getting that information as quickly as possible. Then there's the processing itself. That's all on one Blackford platform that we host there. We can either have it on-premise or in the cloud, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. We then return the result to the packs, but we also need to influence the work list. There's two things there. One is triage. That's saying there's something important here to look at and moving that study up the work list. But the other one is just not wasting the radiologist's time. There's nothing worse than opening a study to read it and then realizing that you haven't got all the information, you're going to have to come back to it. We integrate into the work list to ensure that the notifications are there that either a result is pending or it's already arrived. We then get into the visualization piece of actually looking at the results. And as I've said earlier, no radiologist wants yet another viewer in their display. Everything we do comes through the native packs. We're looking at ways that we can add value to that interaction and developing that alongside our packs partners. We then go down into the reporting aspect where we're trying to make sure that all the information is efficiently transferred into the report that's going to go back to the EMR, that's going to go back to the referrer. And then obviously there's notifications into the referrer base as well, and ensuring that that whole loop has closed. So how do we reckon that we understand this situation well. We have over 700 radiology sites that are using our products. This really was grown out of our original Smart Localizer product, but every one of those sites has a platform, and every one of those sites is looking at additional applications that they can deploy through that platform. I want to go back to the flexible deployment picture. So, the vast majority of our customers are on premise. I think that's the way that the majority of radiology sites currently prefer to manage their infrastructure. However, we have a number of hybrid sites where studies are being sent out into the cloud or to a secure processing location in order to get that computation done without needing to put additional load on the hardware that's deployed in the hospital. We also have a number of customers that are purely in the cloud. Their PACS is in the cloud, our platform is in the cloud, and all processing takes place there. Fundamentally, we have a very flexible approach because we recognize that our customers need that flexibility, and we can work with you to deploy in any way that suits you. We have a spectrum of platform partners and a number of partners in the industry who we sell our products through. And you're going to hear a bit more from those platform partners in a moment. Okay, so I would like to introduce our platform partners. We have Chris from CorTechs, we have Dirk from Icometrix, we have Ajit from Subtle, and we have Susan from VIDA. I'm just going to give them some time to talk through their product offerings and let you learn more about what's available on the platform. So thank you. I'm going to hand over to Chris from CorTechs first of all.
Thanks very much, Ben, for the introduction and for having us participate with you here at SIIM, as well as hosting us on your platform. We definitely do recognize the value and the amount of work that's gone into providing such a deep, thoughtful integration into existing hospital workflows and the delivery of new algorithms. So like everybody else, we have been suffering the last 3 or 4 months with a severe downturn in processing, especially for some of the disease areas that we work in. So for those that aren't familiar with CorTechs Labs and our NeuroQuant family of products, we have AI products that help in the analysis and diagnosis and follow-up of several neurodegenerative conditions as well as brain injuries. Our flagship product, NeuroQuant, was designed originally for the assessment of Alzheimer's patients, and it's been expanded to include looking at epileptic patients or seizure patients, MS patients for both diagnosis and follow-up, and traumatic brain injury, among a number of other uses. As you can imagine, Alzheimer's or dementia patients are a very high-risk group for the COVID-19, and so all of that sort of elective scanning has been shut down for a large part during March and April at least. Similarly, MS patients who are typically on immunosuppressive therapies really are at very high risk of COVID-19, and so have been not being scanned with anywhere near as much frequency as they would have been in normal times. So those are both representatives of some backlogs of cases and reductions in processing that's been going on over the past few months. And we've seen, very similar to you, Ben, that there's about 60 to 70% fall off in these types of studies over this period, based on the probably just over 1,000 sites we have using this software clinically around the world. So definitely we do expect to see some uptick in processing as some of that caseload that needs to be worked through the system. Some of the things like MS follow-ups probably will just resume where they left off, sort of thing, but dementia diagnosis, epilepsy diagnosis, and that sort of thing will definitely need to catch up on backlog of scans. We do expect to see a surge here, where tools such as this that help with efficiency of reading scans can be very valuable. So the AI assistance provides more confidence in the diagnostic read, as well as more objective uniformity across readers in a practice or a network. So the tools are very useful for that. And also we do have just recently, subsequent to our acquisition of Healthlytics, we do have software also for imaging in prostate that could do away with the necessity for the needle biopsy that is typical in diagnostic process for prostate cancer. So if RSI, MRI for prostate can help in the triaging of potential prostate cancer patients, we definitely see the ability to reduce or eliminate the need for the much more invasive needle biopsy, which also is, has a much larger burden on hospitals and clinical care centers. And if we can eliminate the need for those biopsies, it's definitely going to reduce the need for sanitation of equipment and all that sort of additional work that's going to have to be done in a post-COVID world. So that's a small background on our products. Definitely, if you aren't familiar with them, go and check them out at CorTechsLabs.com, and also all available through Blackford. I want to talk a bit about our approach to COVID-19, however. Part of the follow-up and part of the uptick in imaging that's going to happen over the next months and years will be follow-up of COVID-19 patients. We have developed, as I'll show you just in a little bit, a combination of reports that is addressed specifically at the COVID-19 neuroimaging follow-up that is expected to take place. And we are making this suite of products available to people researching COVID-19 right now and trying to understand that disease better. We're making this available free of charge to them. One of the useful things will be the ability to do longitudinal follow-up on these patients. Reducing scan times on these patients is also critical, given that there will be more effort required again between scans to decontaminate equipment and so on. And so we partnered with Subtle Medical, who you will hear from a bit later on, to use their tools for much faster acquisition of input scans. And we've worked with them to validate those products and bring them to market. So, very much believe that decreasing scan time is a huge part of how we're going to have to deal with this uptick in imaging that's going to happen as we move forward. So far, research has showed that about half of the patients positive for COVID-19 have shown abnormalities in MRI scans. As you can imagine, the amount of data is fairly low at this point, given that, again, sort of decontamination requirements for scanners has during the sort of triage phase of COVID-19 has really meant that people couldn't go and get MRI scans. So there are researchers, and we're working with several hospitals in New York particularly, that are doing work on COVID-19 patients now, trying to understand the brain impact of that disease. And as I mentioned, we've developed an array of reports here, which includes both NeuroQuant custom reports, which we have generated, which provides information on the structures thought most likely to be involved in the COVID-19 response, and combine that also with LesionQuant that allows lesions to be visualized, and also with our triage brain atrophy report, which at a glance gives you the status of all of the structures in the brain that can be measured volumetrically. So you get a package of reports that will very quickly help to determine whether or not the patient has been impacted by COVID-19. We believe, and then further study is obviously needed to assess these reports further, but some of the factors that are involved with COVID presentation definitely do seem to map out to changes in the few cases that we've seen in brain volumetrics, and particularly the structures listed on the right here. We use the involvement as the patient moves forward, and in this case, which was a positive case, we had the volumetric analysis that demonstrates the statistically significant atrophy of the thalamus and the whole brain, as well as a significant number of white matter hypointensities. So we definitely see a lot of that sort of necrotic tissue in the brain showed in these white matter hypointensities. Anybody interested in using this suite of reports can go to our website, CorTechsLabs.com/COVID-19, and fill out a brief questionnaire to be assessed for admission into the program of free reports for this. And this is also available through the Blackford platform very easily, as they've got the NeuroQuant basic tools available, and can make those available to customers using NeuroQuant through the Blackford platform as well. And that's it. Thanks again for hosting me.
Okay, thank you for this introduction, Ben. I'm very happy to present our Icobrain, in which we want to transform patient care with imaging AI. also after COVID, and also together with you, with Blackford, to make this available to all centers where patients with neurological disorders are treated. So Icobrain can definitely help you in this peak that we might expect after COVID, because it has some features and benefits that will allow you to be more productive. We've done some research that show that reporting is increased with 60%, and that's important when in a post-COVID search, the radiology workload might be increasing further. Moreover, we have been focusing on optimizing sensitivity, for example, by improving the detection rates, but also improve consistency. We have demonstrated a lower intra and inter-rater variability. And all of this we just don't do only for the radiologists, but also for the referring physicians. Referring to Ben's presentation, we also want to look for new business lines. And by improving patient care, we can add value there by helping earlier diagnosis, by helping to treat, to predict treatment response, and in the end, to improve quality of life. All of this has been built on a strong scientific evidence with over 200 scientific publications and independent validations. And we have clinical reference sites across the world. We are integrated in major patient registries, and we work with all important pharma companies working in the field of neurological disorders. All of this is provided to you in a cloud model, which proves return on investment. There's no installation, maintenance, support fees. And all of this is available via the Blackford platform. And as a combined effort, we make sure there is no downtime for you. Just giving you an idea on the whole portfolio of our brain portfolio. We have at the moment 7 products FDA cleared, and let me run through them from left to right on the screen. We have our flagship, which is the Icobrain MS product, applied in patients with multiple sclerosis. We have a product for dementia called Icobrain DM, for which we have a report for MRI, and we have a report for CT. We have also 2 products for traumatic brain injury, Icobrain TBI for MRI and Icobrain TBI for CT. We have a product, Icobrain EP for temporal lobe epilepsy. And the most recent in our portfolio is the Icobrain CVA product for acute stroke. I want to focus today on the Icobrain MS product in particular, because this patient population was exceptionally vulnerable during the COVID period. Many of them were on immunosuppressant therapies. So they are now finding their way back to the hospitals again. And we want to help you in helping them out in this to get an idea on whether their disease is active or not. To do so, we have a two-page report with on the first page focusing on the lesions, and on the second page focusing on the atrophy, the neurodegenerative aspect of the disease. If we look at the first page, you can see that we measure the flare lesion volume and the change over time, which can indicate whether the patient's disease is active or not, and which helps to understand whether the therapy is working or not. We also provide the information for T1 black holes, as these features occur in a more advanced state of the disease. On the second page, we have the whole brain and gray matter volume. We have chosen to focus on the largest structures because of their lowest relative measurement error. And we compare them with a normative database of healthy controls. With that, it allows you to have a better understanding whether this patient has still a normal volume for the age and gender of that patient. In the example shown here, the whole brain volume has a normative percentile of 3, meaning it is relatively low compared to the healthy population, and which might be an interesting one to follow up closer to see whether the percentile is not dropping further. We don't stop there with providing the quantitative report. We also provide back pre-populated radiological reporting templates to make your life easier as a radiologist, but also to standardize the workflow, to standardize the reporting, and to reduce the reading time. Basically, what we do is we take the information from the quantitative report and we translate that into natural language in a reporting template that is partially filled out by the software and partly need to be filled out by you as a radiologist. This has been proven to improve the productivity of the radiologist. Without using the software, 8 reports could be read in the study that we did, and this was increased to 13 reports every hour. But this is not it. We also look at the disease activity, and we see that when using the software, much more disease activity is picked up than without using the software. In the cohort without software, we see that only 1 in 4 patients was categorized as active, and this is almost doubled when using the software. And there is an additional category of slightly active disease, which might not be a reason for treatment change, but might be a reason for a closer follow-up. Also, in the context of COVID, we have not only focused on brain quantitative analysis, but we also have a lung product available that is specifically tailored for COVID-19, where we quantify the tissue that is associated with COVID-19 in different regions of the lung. We also differentiate between ground glass opacities, consolidation, and crazy paving tissue. So radiologists can have a more complete pulmonary status that includes this lung involvement. We know that this lung involvement correlates with the clinical status and also improves the negative predictive value of negative outcome prediction. Basically, it means that we would be better able to identify patients that will do relatively well given their clinical situations. So that helps to inform treatment decisions and both potentially save ICU beds for patients who need them most. We also know that these quantitative parameters predict the need for oxygenation support and mechanical ventilation. So this is a bit of a short overview of what we can do during this COVID period, but also after, to help you and your practice helping out with the volumes you expect. If you want to have more information, feel free to go to our website, icometrix.com, or get in contact with Blackford, through which we are happy to provide all of our services. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks, Ben, and the Blackford team for giving us this opportunity to actually speak about our products. Unlike most AI companies focused on analytics and the diagnostic tools, just like the previous 2 companies spoke about their tools, Subtle Medical is uniquely focused on the image acquisition phase of the radiology workflow when the patient is in the scanner. Allowing this flexibility of the centers to actually optimize their protocols, their scan workflow, actually provides immediate relief to the patients. It also increases the throughput, providing a direct financial value and ROI for the hospitals and the imaging centers. Our DL-based solutions are a couple of these products, which are actually shown here, SubtlePET and SubtleMR, one for the PET modality and one for the MR modality. Both of them are FDA 510(k) cleared as well as CE marked. SubtlePET allows centers to actually enhance their image quality of their scans, especially acquired in 1/4 of the original scan time, allowing them to improve the throughputs. SubtleMR, on the other hand, allows for higher quality MR imaging outputs through two different methods called as denoising and super resolution. These enables hospitals and imaging centers to enhance the image quality of the PET scans as well as the MR scans. These DL-based algorithms allow centers to highly optimize their scan workflow, scan protocols, and in a post-COVID imaging scenario, potentially increasing their throughputs and profitability. These lead to a couple of different advantages. It allows the patients to go in and out of the scanner quickly. Thus, they can actually be taken through the workflow much more faster, which is understandable during the post-COVID phase. As well as it allows the centers to actually improve the throughput and their profitability or maintain their slot times because they're introducing more of these cleaning protocols which are required in the post-COVID imaging phase. For example, in a normal PET scan may actually take about 18 minutes. The exams may take about 18 minutes. If you acquire that same image in about 4.5 minutes, which is 1/4, you will get a noisy image pretty much diagnostically impossible to actually deal with. SubtlePET software uses deep learning to actually enhance these noisy images within seconds and provide a diagnostically equivalent image to the 18-minute scan in a 1/4 minute of scan time. Especially in a post-COVID imaging phase, this could be an extremely important tool for most of these hospitals and imaging centers. Similarly, SubtleMR, which we feel is a virtual upgrade for the entire MR fleet, combines two distinct modes of image enhancement, denoising and super resolution, to improve the image quality of the MR scans. This also allows the centers to actually optimize their scan workflow even more, allowing less time for patients to be scanned while maintaining the image quality. It supports a full fleet of scanners. It is a vendor agnostic tool. It actually allows scanning around all the different vendors, older fleets as well as the newer fleets, while maintaining the image quality. So as I have shown here, it is an extremely important tool, and it is actually available through the Blackford platform for you to apply in your centers. If you have more questions, please visit our website, subtlemedical.com, or actually reach for more information through the Blackford team. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Ajit, for that overview of Subtle products. I'm now going to hand over to Susan from VIDA to talk through the VIDA products. So over to you, Susan.
Okay, so thanks, Ben, for the introduction and certainly for having all of us with you. I am Susan Wooden, the CEO of VIDA. So VIDA is a clinical AI company, and we're distinguished by the high degree of underlying science and clinical validation that we've amassed for over a decade in the analysis and understanding of the patient's respiratory condition and their clinical journey. Now, we are thrilled to partner with Blackford to provide a seamless workflow solution and together advance the standard of respiratory care through intelligence. VIDA's LungPrint solution was developed in part to advance the radiologist-informed analysis of chest CT imaging. And our discovery application is the first of our solutions to be integrated into the Blackford Radiology AI imaging platform. Now, while the current pandemic has brought an increased world focus on respiratory disease, and it remains the primary cause of death for patients with COVID-19, VIDA has had a sharp and differentiated focus to improve the care of these patients and their underlying respiratory disease conditions for over a decade. And so we differentiate with our breadth of clinical validation, over 200 scientific journals supporting our results, our deep understanding of the radiology workflow of the chest, and our ability to translate that information to impact the physician's efficiency. Now, the significance of physician burnout, specifically radiology burnout, can't be understated and is a problem of growing significance. AI, for example, is targeted to address a 20% delta in physician supply and demand by 2026. And that physician shortage, combined with the ever increasing and changing issue of information overload, leaves a significant unmet need for AI and workflow efficient solutions. And that problem will certainly be exacerbated in the post-COVID radiology reality. So an aim of lung print discovery is to reduce that burnout through workflow efficiencies and concise information delivery, and early indications show the reduction of reading time of up to 35%. Now, a chest CT exam presents an intricate and complex search field that renders it among the costliest exams in reading time of all imaging exams. Now, VIDA attacks this high time cost problem with a fundamental paradigm shift in the way to read a chest CT. And that shift enables a more efficacious read of the exam through our patented topographic MPR technology. Now, if I compare that technology to a traditional coronal MPR, for example, if I compare that technology to a traditional coronal MPR reading, for example, we can yield a rapid global impression of the airways with our topographic MPR. You can see more airways in the field of view versus a traditional coronal. You can also see a more complete understanding of the underlying interstitial lung disease and degree of emphysema. So lung print couples this automatically generated enhanced visualizations with underlying disease quantitative metrics in the form of a structured report. And that combination enables a more robust collaboration and information transfer to a referring clinician, and can assist in the management of disease or treatment decisions through this standardized report. This reading paradigm has shown as much as a 35% decrease in a radiologist's reading time. And again, not just the difference in reduction in reading time, but also the increase in confidence in their overall reading assessment. Now, there remain both differing and formulating perspectives on the appropriateness of using CT scans for the diagnosis of COVID-19. However, the requirement for the identification of these unique features of the disease, of these COVID-19 patients, and certainly the monitoring these patients will very likely remain for years. Now, VIDA's existing lung print solution can not only be used for the assessment of COVID-19 patients, but importantly, for the combined assessment of other underlying disease characteristics of that patient, like COPD. So here we're showing that in this patient, an underlying condition of emphysema in that COVID-19 patient. So that COPD patient, for example, we know that there is an associated 6-fold increase in risk for COVID disease progression with a patient with underlying COPD. And so VIDA has validated and has a rich understanding of these underlying conditions like COPD that can be used in the analysis or understanding the risk profile of the patient with COVID-19. So additionally, we do know that patients that have suffered with COVID-19 have a much greater risk of a severe respiratory impact and a much higher risk of a resurgent long-term respiratory and other health issues. And there's an ongoing need, there will be an ongoing need to monitor these conditions. So in summary, VIDA has incorporated and validated workflow efficiencies into its lung print discovery solution. These efficiencies can result in a 30% reading time savings in the radiology reading exam of these complex chest CT examinations. This time savings could mean better departmental economics and decreased radiologic burnout. Underlying these efficiencies is VIDA's differentiated expertise and the coupling of our sophisticated visualizations and the quantification of multiple lung disease and the risk of that disease progression. And it's the holistic view or the combined view of these multiple lung diseases that give VIDA an advantage of analyzing these COVID patients in the detection and also in the monitoring of these patients. And finally, VIDA has a passion and a purpose, and it's a singular and differentiated focus on patients and providers in analyzing lung disease and their associated comorbidities. That singular focus has enabled us to use transfer knowledge from a cadre of lung diseases and apply that transfer knowledge to the emerging requirement of COVID-19 patients. So Ben, I thank you again for having us to talk to you today. We're honored to partner with Blackford and be a part of this important discussion.
So thank you, Susan, for that introduction to VIDA, and thank you to Chris, Dirk, Ajit, and Susan for your presentations on the products. Normally at this stage, we would be going straight into a Q&A session, but obviously we don't have the audience right now. So we're looking forward to the Q&A session through the SIIM virtual conference and welcoming both the partners that you've seen today and Blackford staff to be able to come and answer the questions that you have on the Blackford platform and on our platform partners. So we look forward to talking to you then. Thank you.
Hello, this is Rick Wiggins from the University of Utah. I'm proud to serve as your host and as the program chair for the SIIM 2020 virtual meeting. Thank you for attending this session. This is the end of this non-CME session.